So, hello everybody. So before I begin, I would just like to mention that the webinar is being recorded for the sake of documentation, as well as for the, and we are at the moment going also live on Facebook. So today on this webinar, you're still cordially invited to join us here on Zoom, because people that join us on Zoom are also able to discuss further the text as well as Maja's work. So today we are having Maja Hodošček as a guest speaker, who is an artist who is often using video as a medium, and she's particularly interested in different kind of modes of learning as a part of her practice to speak about different social and political aspects. So what I would like to mention is that we decided to choose a text by Byung Chul-Han, a philosopher and cultural theorist, Germany-based, connected to South Korea, hello, and the text is titled The Crisis of Freedom. The text is actually an introduction text from a book on Psychopolitics, Neoliberalism and New Technologies of Power. And we would like to discuss this introduction within the book, even though it's not actually introduction, it is the first chapter. But before we start, I would like to ask everybody to introduce themselves very briefly. In a sense, I will just say my name, my pronoun, and the answer, where do you want to go today? Which is actually reference to the text. Where do you want to go today was actually Microsoft's early advertising slogan that suggested unlimited freedom and mobility on the web. So I can start. My name is Irena Borić. My pronouns are she and her. And I actually wanted to go today to this very webinar. So Ivana, maybe you want to introduce yourself?
Hello.
Oh, zdravo.
Hi, zdravo. Hi. I'm Ivana Unuk. Well, what could I say? Of course, she and her goes for me as well. And my spot was also this webinar for this evening. That was what I had planned. So.
Okay, thank you. Maja? Antonci, yeah.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Maja Antončić, and I'm really glad that I'm part of this event. So yes, I'm here now, but maybe today, later, I want to dance.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Maja, of course, you can also introduce yourself, because we are curious, where did you want to go today?
To be honest, I wanted to be here, so I'm here. I would also like to be, of course, maybe in another city, but it's not possible due to the current situation. But yeah, my name is Maja. For me, it's also he or her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so.
Okay, I would now just ask Peter to introduce himself. We are just having this round of introduction, and you are the last for now joining us. So just if you can say your name, your pronoun, and where did you want to go today? Maja to briefly present her work, and then we will open the discussion about the text. So Maja, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Irina. Thank you for inviting me. I will just show a short clip from my 2 videos that are somehow connected with this text that we did or we will read today. And it's a work that I started to develop during the residency in Spain, in Tabacalera, in the International Cultural Center. And at the time I was researching on how and when human relations and performance of the self kind of became an integral part of work. And I was looking at different historical examples on how business corporations started to collaborate with the field of psychology in order to implement human resources in the working structure. I can maybe say about some examples later in the discussion. But out of that research came, I developed a video series that kind of tried to reflect this contemporary condition of immaterial labor, where the self is in the center, it's the main tool of production. And I was interested in what kind of emotional or psychological processes are embedded in this performativity of the self or in the display of the self. So I decided to create a very simple but not so simple experiment where I collaborated with actors and I asked them if they could individually perform in front of the camera for several hours. But the thing was that they had no direction, they had no instruction, no script, nothing that they could depend on except themselves. So I was very curious what will happen in this duration, where this relation between the subject who performs and the camera that observes but doesn't respond, what will happen, what kind of attitudes will emerge from that. And what is interesting also maybe in relation to this text is quickly it became clear that in this situation where you have this very free structure that they could not manage, the actors could not manage their emotions. They could not, to a period of time they could, but then it started to dissolve somehow. So it was not possible to control emotions all the time. And I will show you now just really short clip from 2 videos. Yeah. Just a second.
What is interesting? What is interesting for the camera? I have no idea. I have no idea. Maybe it's boring or something. Maybe I'm probably. Maybe I should be more funny. Maybe I don't know. I should be more aggressive, shout and take me off my shirt and show something. Maybe. What do you think? Do you think I should do that? Beautiful day. It's beautiful. I should stay like in a beach or in mountain, but I'm tired. So always could be better. Always. My mind thinks all the time that I have to do important things all the time. My mind is telling me, you have to do important things. You have to do important things, and suddenly, I can't feel happy in all the week. I can't feel happy with this thought. It's all the time telling me that I have to be better, that I have to do important things. All the time is telling me that. So I speak to you and I say to you, shut up, okay? Shut up.
I'm ready. I'm ready. Whenever you want. We start. They're here for some reason, no? But I also came here for something. I can go, I can, and I will go whenever I want, not whenever you want. I will go, so I can go whenever I can. See, I can go, I'm moving, you see? I can go. So do something to keep me here, because I can go. You see, I can go. I'm not here anymore. Shit. Shit. I can go, it's true, I can go, but I don't want to. That's the thing, I don't want to go. I thought we could start from the beginning again. How do you want me to do this? How do you want me to do this? It's still okay.
Okay. Do you want to say something more, Maja, or?
No, I think we can just
Okay.
connect it with the text when we start.
Okay. So welcome, Boško. And Isidora, maybe, I don't know. Okay, so the idea is actually to have some kind of reading circle. That means that Maja and me maybe are gonna manipulate the conversation a little bit, but that doesn't mean that we would not like you to be included as well. So if you feel like talking about any aspect of Maja's work or any aspect of the text or any issue that comes along during the discussion, please be free to include yourself and to share your thoughts. As this is not intended that we know everything about this text, but it's rather the idea is that we somehow learn together throughout the text about Maja's practice, but also about issues that Byung Chul-Han is mentioning. So, okay, without further ado, then I will just start to say a few things about Byung Chul-Han and about his text, in a sense that he did, I don't know, did you manage to read the text? If you didn't, well, okay, then you will have to maybe connect to aspects, to some parts of it from another perspectives of knowledge. But still, if you have, then it's also great to comment about some things that how he starts with. So maybe to make this first relation with Maja's work. So you have seen the performers, the actors that are actually faced or confronted with a really awkward moment of kind of having camera in front and having kind of all this space for themselves that can be used, but they are not directed. There is no very clear direction or point where they should go or what they're supposed to do. And then there comes this kind of maybe some sort of a friction that is taking place when they are kind of feeling, yeah, like caught somehow. And it seems to me interesting when you look at these actors, and then to go into the text, which actually discusses the whole idea of that kind of performativity that is somehow constant for the way or we are living today, or better yet to say it, the way we are working today. So what are the actual working conditions today, and what is how do we constantly somehow invent ourselves? So this moment to start the text also with what he's claiming at the very beginning is that today we do not deem ourselves subjugated subjects, but rather projects, always refashioning and reinventing ourselves. So a sense of freedom attends passing from the state of subject to that of a project. Maja, I would ask you maybe to comment first, but then also I would ask everybody else to share their thoughts along the lines of the text or Maja's work.
Thank you, Irina. For me, it's interesting, this notion becoming a project, because project means that you are planned, no? That you have a concrete goal, and that everything that you do, that it has some kind of a predetermined, as I said, that it's planned. So this is quite a difference. And I think that what he's trying to, for me, this text was interesting, how he tries to unpack the notion of freedom, that this state of freedom is, for him, he defines it as being in a relationship, that with the freedom is only possible in relationship with others. So in this situation that we are dealing now, when we are basically isolated, I don't mean in a pandemic, but in our working environments where we are isolated and we can only depend on ourselves, this doesn't create freedom, but it's, as he says, it creates a crisis of freedom. And not only that, it also produces some kind of a violence. And for me, this notion, this connecting freedom with violence was interesting also in relation to the work that I showed you, because the way it dissolved the performance of the work of the actors, it also had some element of violence in this narration that it's unfolding in front of the viewer, because yes, this structure was very open and it was free, let's say. You can do whatever you want in front of the camera, but very quickly it became apparent that this freedom produces anxiety and stress, basically. Maybe I can also just comment kind of the inspiration for this project, because as I mentioned before in the introduction, that I was looking at various historical examples on how this kind of more personalized or let's say management that was more adapted to personal needs was implemented. One of the examples is also, it's called T groups. This was like an educational laboratory that was happening in the United States after the Second World War, where they would train many workers. They would take them to, I don't know, for a week long or weekends long training sessions where they would sit in a circle and they would just talk about themselves. And the point of this was that they got to know themselves and others, and how they form relationships with others and how they see themselves. And the important was also the feedback. And this was a and it looked similar to this that I did together with the actors, just that I removed all the feedback and others, but that's not the point. Anyway, the idea was that out of this learning about how we behave and how we interact with each other, business corporations use this knowledge to develop management strategies that would be more inclusive, no? And I think this was also, I think it's still relevant for today in a way, that this inclusiveness and possibility to participate creates this kind of responsibility for the work and identification. And the more we identify with our work, the more we become this subjugated subjects, as he says in the text.
In relation to that, I can also I have a quote. So it's as he say, neoliberalism represents a highly efficient, indeed an intelligent system for exploiting freedom. Everything that belongs to practices and expressive forms of liberty, emotion, play, and communication comes to be exploited. It is inefficient to exploit people against their will. Allow exploitation yields scant returns. Only when freedom is exploited are returns maximized. But it is interesting to have this moment of willingness to, even though it's not, I don't think that it is perceived as exploitation at all, but there is the willingness is still there. It's like, I think it's happening with the, like, people are consenting to that, even though they are maybe not really realizing that is happening somehow. I don't know if somebody else wants to jump in.
And one of the, maybe I can comment, one of the ideas behind this, what I was trying to somehow describe before with this inclusiveness, was also because this was more efficient. He also mentions here in the text that it's inefficient to exploit people against their will, no? I mean, if you have this situation as it was in like classical Marxist workers and owners of the production, I mean managers, it was easier to form solidarity because it was clear it was a conflict around ownership, no? So it was easier for the workers, let's say, to unite and form some kind of solidarity. And now, when there's no clear boundary, when we are basically we all own our own means of production, it's very difficult to form this solidarity or to resist.
Yeah, he kind of goes on further with kind of having this moment that he talks about slave and a master, that there is not really clear master. In a way, it does resembles this Foucauldian panopticon, like the source of the power is somehow unclear. And then he also goes into that moment that actually we are kind of fighting ourselves. And I think that moment of fighting ourselves, because there is no master, but there is only us, and like what we have like means of production is basically only ourselves. So in that sense, it's really like interesting how he goes into that moment of there is no revolution, but just depression. So I guess this is again that line of solidarity or going into your inner fight. But how do you think about this, about his ideas that because of that there is no, like in a sense, that no proletariat exists under the neoliberal regime at all, because there is no working class being exploited by those who own the means of production. Like, what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, well, I would agree with him in a sense that it's becoming more and more abstract. But I would not say that there is, I mean, there is a lot of exploitation going on, and this forcing of, actually when I was reading this text I was thinking also about the film from Ken Loach, the latest film, Sorry We Missed You, because it's a similar, it's a quite illustrative example of this forcing people to become entrepreneurs, basically. It's, I don't know if you saw this movie, but it's about a man who is a worker, and he works for a post office. He begins to work for the corporation that delivers packages and mail, and he is basically in a position of an entrepreneur, and then he has to, of course, he exhausts himself to the point of he also neglects his family. Everything suffers because of this, because he's totally consumed by this job. So I don't know how. Also, for me, it was interesting how I. Because before I was working a lot with pedagogy, a lot with schools and with different pupils. And last year I went to a seminar for teachers that was like a 6 months long seminar. And the idea was that they trained it's a public school that hired the coach for in order to train the teachers to begin to think about education more through this entrepreneurial lens. And I think this is also like very concerning, no? What does this say, for instance, that public institution, that a project that is funded by Ministry of Education, of basically state-funded project that is trying to implement this very neoliberal ideas in the public school, for instance. So I would, I don't know, as I said, it's very concerning, this and it was interesting that on this seminar, this notion in the center is always, of course, self-realization, and you can be whatever you want to be if you just try hard enough. But it's always spoken through these positive terms, you know, always through this lens of something positive. While, for instance, in these experiments that I did with actors, I was interested in this kind of opposite side, you know, what actually happens with the body and mind, that it's constantly in a mode of self-exploitation. What is happening when you cannot, or when you are non-stop in a situation where you have to manage your emotions or construct some kind of display, or what is behind this. And he also says in the text that depression and burnouts and all that this is somehow related. So.
Yeah, for me, it's also that moment, what you were saying, that when he's mentioning this moment of guilt and like in a sense of failure, and when individual fails, there is like this personal notion of shame or of personal guilt. And the responsibility is like completely on individual. There is no any kind of responsibility on the society or on some high kind of larger structure, but then everything is somehow imposed on the individual who, of course, it's your own fault that you failed. In a sense, you didn't succeed or whatever was promised at the beginning of that kind of ideas. And I also find it very interesting actually how this body works with your within your work, because I think it's really interesting performance, and it's very like it's quite difficult in a way to kind of bear with it somehow, because it's that constant feeling of some kind of anxiety, and you really don't know why is that happening in a way, even though like you can imagine that the anxiety is coming because there is no the other person somehow, that there is this moment of kind of being exposed and completely, yeah, some kind of nakedness in a way is happening there, in a way that you are kind of peeling your skin and showing yourself. But it's very difficult to do something like this, especially when you are doing it like, you know, all the lights are there, but you are not, you don't even know what you're doing in a way. Like in a sense, I felt that throughout that performance, because there is no clear guideline or anything like that. And I'm also wondering about the process itself. As you mentioned, it was a process of few hours. So what was your role in a sense? Like your role was behind the camera, you were present there all the time, or you left the camera and went out of the space?
No, I was, my role was a role of the observer. I was also the one of the maybe influence that came in the end on the idea about this work was that I don't know if you know, but in the beginning of the 20th century, they again in the US, they made a studies. It's called Hawthorne studies. And it was a studies also where the basically a lot of psychologists were researching about what is happening in the factories. And the experiment was that they wanted to test in one company in Illinois, I think it was West Electric, something like that. They wanted to test how lightning would affect the productivity of the workers. So they were changing lights, different lights, and then it was obvious that not much, the productivity didn't change. But then they separated them into smaller groups, and they were together with the manager, and the manager observed them, and sometimes would make some interaction or comment. And they realized that the workers modified behavior because they knew that they were being watched by someone. And also because the manager would make like positive comments or would show an interest in them, they would try harder, so the productivity went up. And this studies is known for being like the first studies that declared like that the working space is a social space first. And I thought it was interesting, and I was also curious then what would happen if you watch, we are being observed anyway all the time because we are living in a surveillance society. But I wanted to emphasize this by making it clear that the camera is there only for this purpose, to watch, to observe, and nothing else, you know. So yeah, it was quite interesting what kind of process then took place.
If anybody else wants to share some thoughts. So this is a little moment of thinking or rethinking things. As you mentioned, I mean, this was also the idea from the introduction. Where are you gonna go? Where do you want to go today? I found it funny to use it in the introduction because it's like this Microsoft advertising slogan that wanted to address that you can go everywhere in the world just by being online. And that's another layer to this aspect, like what we are living now, where is that kind of freedom? So we have all the Microsoft slogan kind of freedom. We can go wherever we want. We can go to New York events or whatever, being based in Maribor or other places. And but at the same time, it has nothing to do with the freedom, as we are completely kind of framed also with the frames of corporations, like you know, the Zoom, the Facebook, that kind of moments. And this is that kind of moment of like as he said also today, unbounded freedom and communication are switching over into total control and surveillance. But also one thing that I really found interesting was actually when he's mentioning this aspect of surveillance. So when he's discussing that moment, then he also says, it is as if everyone were watching over everyone else, even before intelligence agency or secret services have stepped in to supervise and steer. So in a way, it is kind of, according to him, it goes even worse. I don't know, can we compare this to Stasi? Moment, you know, in a sense, because it was all about information in a way anyways. So who has the right information and who has the access to it? I mean, it was all about the Cold War anyways. And then like what happens is that kind of feeling is still again, and what he's saying also is that such primary intrinsic surveillance proves much more problematic than the secondary extrinsic surveillance undertaken by secret services and spying agencies. So in a way, this primary intrinsic surveillance, I would actually read it as some kind of self-censorship, in a sense that you are already, like you already know how can you perform or how can you act, and then you are already like doing this kind of restraining yourself. And for me, it was also interesting, like I remember when talking about, or like it is also very much present in Stilinović's works, this idea of censorship. For him, it was the worst kind, actually, that kind of self-censorship, when you already like self-censoring before even it goes out in the public kind of sphere, just to not mention, like you are already doing the control and the surveillance yourself somehow. So I don't know, I found this kind of interesting moment also within the text.
Yeah, but I think it's important because he mentions that we are willingly doing this. You know, that we are willingly participate. That's why it's, I think that's how I understand it. It makes it more problematic than what he says, than the secret services and spying agencies.
So the text was actually written in 2017. So it had a bit of different viewpoint. Of course, the author has a lot to say about the current conditions and so on. But still, I think it's quite interesting when we think of these kind of moments of today. And then also what is interesting is that he kind of talks about that the call for transparency presupposes occupying the position of a shocked spectator. So it is not voiced by engaged citizens so much as by passive onlookers. So participation now amounts to grievance and complaint. With that, the society of transparency, inhabited by onlookers and consumers, has given rise to a spectator democracy. So, I mean, this is kind of question for everybody also, like, what are your thoughts on that kind of moment of participation? Especially when this kind of participation today, it kind of also shifted into another layer, especially with all this kind of digitalization, and where is actually that kind of moment for some kind of subversion?
Well, I think many, one simple answer maybe, but also maybe not so simple, is that many engineers or Silicon Valley people now started also to raise the awareness that the social media is not, that it took a different point from what it was what it was used to be, that it became something else now. So they are also kind of trying to encourage people to maybe not use it anymore or redefine it.
Ivana, did you maybe want to say something?
I did several times, actually.
Sorry for the interruption.
No, it's okay. No, the kids keep popping up. They demand attention, so it's really hard for me to, you know, I listen to you, and the moment I want to say, somebody comes. But yeah, definitely, there were several points that I found very interesting, both inside what you said, Irena, in the text, and in your work, Maja. And what Irena said about how we are basically self-censoring. I think that's a very powerful point in a negative way. And in your work, I saw that, as you mentioned, with those people who are working, and somebody comes. I mean, the manager is there, and they alter the way they act because they know that they are being watched. And I think that has penetrated in our lives as well. And one of the ways how we can rebel is to talk and interact, and not be these silent spectators that sit around and do this silent democracy, as you mentioned, Maja, I think. So I don't know. I mean, and there were several other points, of course, as well, but please feel free to, you know, interact a little bit more.
Thank you, Ivana.
Okay.
I would agree that we need to engage and talk more, because it seems like also now in the pandemic we are heading even to a more isolated, even to a wider isolation. So it's a challenge how to.
Yeah. And also, you know what, the videos that you showed have this very sincere tension in them, and this feeling of you know, how shall I say, being lost in a way, and not being able to, because it's not easy to express those kind of feelings. And we are, as you also said, we are somehow trained with this society that is in the situation now with COVID and everything else. And we are closed inside, and we feel this pressure and tension, and just to be able to release it maybe through this kind of communication, I think that's also very important. So not to go into that positive way, always trying to, you know, this negative, how shall I say, it's, please help me, you know what I mean, this positive, false positive, it's actually not that. And I think that is really messing up the world now. Also the communication, you know, you cannot express how you feel, it's not accepted. And people are inside, and they are, maybe for, you know, in the beginning it was easier, you could maybe read a book and I don't know, study and enjoy for what you didn't have time. But then we actually saw in front of us, not working, but interacting over, I don't know, Facebook and Twitter, and all the politics and all the negative information coming in every day. So you had to filter this. And I think we have to use Facebook and other tools in the same way. We just filter it. We know what's going, the processes that are going in the back, and we know they are using our information. So we have to be smart about that. And I don't know, just use it as a tool. I think use it as a tool, not cutting it off, because I do think the future is in technology and we have to adapt. But a lot of it is subconscious somehow. We are not conscious of, we are leaving traces on the internet, and people are, of course, getting the information now more and more. But I think it's still quite a problem, a big problem for many. It's definitely pervasive in many aspects.
Yeah, I want to maybe.
So I think communication is really important, and you know, trying to move forward with that kind of stance in life. I don't know.
Yeah, but for me it was also interesting.
It is hard, definitely, but
Yes, Maja.
Yeah, I just want to comment on what Ivana said. I agree, yes, the communication is very important. And for me, the most intriguing aspect in this text was actually this that I mentioned before, the way he defines freedom, through that freedom is basically a relationship, no, with that you can self-realize in the together with others. But I was asking myself if we need to learn that again, you know, because if we are in this position of being like projects and non-stop or performing or self-censoring and curating ourselves, can we do we know how this relationship that doesn't include all that looks like, or you know, or do we need to learn this in a way? I was asking myself while reading this text.
Yeah, it definitely has a drug sort of quality, and we probably need to get off the drugs. Yes, that's definitely true. technology, and Facebook definitely. I mean, use it in a different way, definitely. What do you propose as you know, a way of moving forward? If you gather all the information and you know you are looking into this matter very thoroughly, so maybe you have some insights, Maja.
I'm not against social media, and not at all, but I would like that this manipulation would not be present. No, this non-stop exposure towards some algorithms that calculate what you want and takes that you are considered as a data. This I think it's. But I don't necessarily mean, I didn't read this text only in relation to social media, or
yes,
the project that I did was not necessarily concerned with social media, but in general, if we, how is this affecting our minds and our bodies, this non-stop pressure to, I work a lot with high school students, that and I did also a small experiment with them. I also asked them if they could be in front of the camera and talk for 5 minutes, and they it was very hard, and they experienced anxiety. And then we had a discussion, and it was really interesting how they are using the this smartphones unconsciously, almost. They are not, I mean, they are taking pictures non-stop, but they don't realize what this what is this machine, no, that films you non-stop. And when they were confronted with the camera, they experienced uncomfort. And yeah, it was interesting to kind of see that this duality, no? In a one sense, you are non-stop using the camera, but then you are also afraid of it, no?
If I may say something, refer to that what you said now, Maja, I find it really interesting, because through through this reinventing, let's say, ourselves, through presenting ourselves on the social media, on the internet. So we, all the time, we are curating our presentations, let's say. But I find really interesting opposite side in your video with these actors confronting cameras, and they somehow they can't manage actually to stay in this pose, you know, the actor's pose. They suddenly crash, and they become really sincere, and really like you can actually see themselves, them nude actually, in this sense. And it's actually opposite side of the with this freedom they have in the in front of the camera. And they have also a bit of freedom of in time, let's say, because it's you're recording it really for a long period. It's like somehow naturally they undress themselves, and they show them their weakness and their questions and their thoughts. Like, it's actually amazing to see it, And with this, let's say, opposite side of the how we can through presenting on the internet, we can curate ourselves all the time, and really think what will we post, or what will we say, or what will we write. But and it's great actually, opposite thing in this video. It's really really interesting, when they are confronted, and probably those pupils you had in front of the camera also, they show this weak side through that that experiment of yours, probably.
Thank you, Maja, for your comment. Yeah, I would agree. It's very it shows how much we manage ourselves, no? Through, I mean, manage emotions, no? We are very aware what can be shown and what has to remain hidden. And in this duration and in this context, that was really, as I mentioned before, it was very, even a bit aggressive. The actors could not hide anymore.
It was really interesting how they actually you could see a pressure on themselves, like they pressure themselves like on themselves. It's not even the camera anymore, or you probably. And you actually, even though you could somehow edit this video by yourself to, like, probably as a author, you can how to say you can make the video like this line of the, I don't know, the drama, you know, dramaturgic line, but actually with this kind of let's say natural performing, you couldn't actually, even you probably you couldn't manipulate it, all of these 2 hours, let's say, recording to one you want to. So you can see as a we can see it like as a really sincere exposure. Exposure.
But it might also be manipulation, no? Because maybe they manipulated me, you know. And so I don't know. It's we could discuss about that, no?
Okay. Thank you everybody for sharing your thoughts. And now we are like up to for a closure. I don't know if anybody wants to share some final thoughts. Okay, if not, we didn't touch upon few other things that were there, but still, of course, we have a webinar usually for 1 hour. And I think it's a good timing, especially when it comes to this different kind of concentration on Zoom. And also this is an attempt to kind of get together and engage in a different kind of thinking together and being together and learning together. And I would like to thank everybody for being here with us. And thank you very much, Maja.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and it was really nice to see you, Ivana.
Even yeah, it was nice to see you too.
Yes. So thank you, everyone, and hopefully see you soon in some other circumstances.
Yes, it's true. Better circumstances.
Hey, zdravo.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.